Hello, it's the Great Canadian Bagel here, coming to you with the second to last U.S. presidential election series prediction video. Just a refresh for everyone who didn't see last week's video, we are going to have another video output on November 2nd. That will be my last projection. And then sometime after the election, like all the votes are tallied, I don't know how many weeks it takes to count all the votes because across all the states, because different states have different rules for how late they can accept mail-in ballots and stuff like that. But once we have all the results for all of the votes, I will then do a post-mortem and talk about where I was wrong, how I was wrong, where my model, whether I think this is just what's the word for this? A margin of error wrong, or polling wrong, or it's a model wrong. We'll talk about that in that post-mortem video. But for now, let's talk about the projection for this week. So, let's start, as always, with Democrat safe states. We got Hawaii, California, D.C., Maryland, Massachusetts, New York, and New Hampshire. That hasn't moved at all. Really. Sometimes Washington's a safe state, but pretty solid. Safe Republican states. That's the wrong color. Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska at large, sorry. 1st, 3rd, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Indiana. Indiana just ticked across the threshold this week. And by that I mean today, this morning. Or not this morning, the last time I recalculated the numbers in the model, which was today. Otherwise, really not much. How much changed? Indiana has been hovering around almost safe for a while now, so it's not that surprising. Moving to Democrat likely, Washington, Illinois, Delaware, New Jersey, Kentucky, Rhode Island, Maine first. No surprises. Moving to Republican likely, Alaska, Montana, Missouri, Texas, and South Carolina. No surprises. Moving to Democrat lean, Oregon has shifted right back down into lean column this week by a little hair. I think it's hovering at like 54.9% of two-party vote. So obviously the real election it's going to be less because other parties exist. We have Colorado, New Mexico, Virginia. Virginia's also pretty close state. It's relatively close to a tilt. Same with New Hampshire here, which is very, very close to a tilt, but it's still lean. And Maine at large, that's not even close to a tilt. It is almost actually likely. So moving to Republican lean, we got Arizona. Oops, Maine second, Iowa, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. Not surprising, and we see here Trump has pushed over the edge, but continuing interest, we will continue filling out the map, so tilt. Minnesota. Or tilt Democrat, sorry. Tilt Republican. Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan. Michigan, not surprised about. It's the most flippy. It is the swingiest state in my model. It is going to keep swinging back and forth forever, presumably. Nevada and Wisconsin got a little less safe. Otherwise, really not much interesting happened here. I will note I did not color in Nebraska second because Nebraska second is too close to call. Not that it matters. If that one electoral vote is what matters, I'm shocked. But that's what we have here for the projection. Trump got a little better from last week, mostly because Michigan is now in his camp, albeit barely. Otherwise, a win's a win for Trump. I should also note that this week's projection does predict a statistical tie in vote support, about 48.4 to 48.4, with the remaining, 3.4 being other parties. Moving to Trump's best case scenario, his best case scenario got a bit better. Mostly Virginia is now tilt instead of tilt Democrat. A few other things, Colorado's tilt Democrat, tilt Democrat instead of lean. Illinois is lean instead of likely. Some Republican states moved up a level of safety. Otherwise, it's really it's been hovering around this area. Last week was like the lowest Trump's best case scenario ever has been. There's a bunch of polls last week, that have been less tight. Like there was a Hill poll that was polling people, HarrisX poll that was pulling both Biden and Trump down significantly, which increases margin of error, which increases best case scenarios based on how my model calculates best case scenario. So, not a surprise here. Biden's best case scenario hasn't moved really. If you look intently, you'll see some things like Wisconsin is lean Biden instead of tilt. Arizona's tilt Republican instead of lean. There's a few other ones. Really, not much has happened. This is pretty constant. So, I think it is safe to say, though, based on Biden's best case scenario, and I should note Biden's best case scenario is basically sits there and assumes that most pollsters have accurately, or the way a lot of pollsters are distributing undecideds is correct. I have a different manner of distributing undecided voters because of historical trends. Undecideds typically have favored Republicans more. So, yeah, I mean, these are the scenarios. Moving into just looking at some graphs. So we see here lots of movement up and down, up and down, up and down. Right now it is literally tied. If you look here, 48.4 to 48.4. Margin of errors have tightened across the board, but they're moving up in the last little bit. I think we should it depends. If the race is I would expect if Trump is more likely to win, the margin of errors are going to blow out by next week. If Biden is more likely to win, they should narrow, because the polling overall has been saying Biden's ahead. So if Biden is legitimately ahead, the margins should narrow on this, because the margins of error is so high, as you see 2.2 and 1.7. I mean, that's actually relatively low, but high compared to the lowest point, which was like 1.6 and 1, I think. Regardless. Yeah. Things are tightening up in popular vote, which doesn't matter. And Trump is pulling ahead as a result in electoral votes. We'll see come election day how far he does come in electoral votes, but seeing as my model has consistently been putting him in the front, if I was a betting man, I would be betting money on Trump winning. Now, for those of you at home who are wondering, what should you look out for on election day? And I feel like this has probably been said by many other people before, but I'm going to throw my 2 cents on this. Pennsylvania. Normally it's Florida where you look to see how you watch as a hawk, but I think Pennsylvania is where you want to watch this week, this election. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, he wins the election. If Biden wins Pennsylvania, I think Biden wins the election. Now, that said, if you look at this model, technically speaking, Trump doesn't need Pennsylvania. But I struggle to see many scenarios where Trump loses Pennsylvania and wins. If you want to, I'm not going to really go too much in detail why I don't really see those scenarios. I don't want to get a lot into what is politics in these videos per se. I want to keep it mostly focused on forecasting, not on political dissection. Though, if you are interested, feel free to ask in the comment section below. I will talk to you. I will, in the comments section, discuss why I don't see Pennsylvania or Trump winning without Pennsylvania. But I don't really want to discuss it in the video. I think we'll make the video like 10 minutes longer than it needs to be. So, that's this week's projection. This is the second last projection of this election cycle. So, if you liked the video, please like, share, subscribe below. Comment if you don't like the model, or if you think I'm wrong, where you think I'm wrong, if you think I'm right, or if you want to hear my thoughts about Pennsylvania, ask me in the comments. If you don't care about my thoughts on Pennsylvania, don't. It's a free world. Hopefully. Otherwise, see you all Tuesday. Have a good week.